after Roger Moore. And I think he was the guy that they wanted and really wanted to go with. And then Remington Steele gets picked up for this final season out of the blue. And he has to decline the James Bond job. And then, and they go with Timothy Dalton, who is awesome in, unfortunately, only 2 movies.
Uh-huh.
But I really liked Timothy Dalton Bond. I think Timothy Dalton was underrated as James Bond. And kind of those Bond movies are kind of the ones that lay the groundwork for what Daniel Craig would do with the role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Pierce Brosnan loses out on Bond. Now that things turn out well for him later on, because after some trouble, after Dalton has to drop out because they had trouble with the Bond franchise for a number of years, it gets rebooted in the mid-90s, and Pierce Brosnan obviously has his schedule cleared up at this point in time and accepts the job and becomes the new James Bond in 1995. But yeah, he lost out. Yeah, GoldenEye, which is one of the best Bond movies. And unfortunately, he lost out on James Bond because of Remington Steele, as did Stephanie Zimbalist losing out on RoboCop. So there's that casting news. We talked about Ronnie Cox being the villain, being Dick Jones, who's the number 2 guy at OCP in the film. He used to play a bunch of good guys, and this was the first time he played the bad guy, and he does very well.
Yeah, I would say it made him at that time all the more iconic as far as a villain.
Yeah, and he's the greedy corporate villain in the film, because there's actually 2 villains in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Ronnie Cox is the corporate villain, and he did so well in RoboCop and had such a good time playing the bad guy that he immediately signs on as the villain in Verhoeven's next movie, Total Recall. Kind of playing the same character, but he's still really good in that one too. And then the other casting news, we talked about the villains in this movie. The other villain in the movie, which I think is, to me, not on par, but very close to being on par with another great 80s action movie villain that we've talked about before, and that's Hans Gruber.
Oh, okay.
In Die Hard. I think Kurtwood Smith as Clarence Boddicker in RoboCop is another pretty classic, really evil villain.
Yeah.
In the 80s canon.
Totally against type,
Yeah, he hadn't done a whole lot up until this point. He's mostly known now for being
Red
on That 70s Show, and which is a comedy. And I don't know if he's really played a whole lot of villainous roles beyond this. Everything that I looked him up in, he's in it, and he's good in those movies, but he's not the villain.
I remember him being in the, and this is a deep cut, but he's the father in Alicia Silverstone's The Crush, I believe.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Jesus. It might be since like 1993 or 94 since I've seen that movie. It's been that long. He's in Broken Arrow. He's got a small part in Broken Arrow.
I was just going to say, this reminds me of when, Travolta made that jump to a villain in Broken Arrow. And I feel like he had a lot, like tons of fun doing that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and Kurtwood Smith is great. Is great here as well.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you did. He's also in, we've mentioned it before because this is a kind of an underrated favorite for both you and I. He's Matt Dillon's dad in To Die For.
Oh, yeah.
And he's really good in that, but he's great in this movie.
Can you fly, Bobby?
Oh, my God. When I texted you that the other night.
I guess that was, did you know that was improv?
A lot of his lines in this film are improv. I think like he was really good with it, and Verhoeven just kind of let him go.
Yeah. Oh man.
Because I read like a major scene, like all of his lines are improv, and that's the drug warehouse scene.
Oh, okay.
Which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I read that a lot of his dialogue is improv, which is good. I mean, when I think about a lot of the quotable lines in the movie, you know, that don't belong to RoboCop.
Yes.
Or that aren't, I'd buy that for $1, which is said multiple times throughout the movie because that TV show keeps popping up. All the iconic lines are from Clarence Boddicker. And rounding out the cast, we have Miguel Ferrer as Bob Morton, who is the guy who creates the RoboCop program. Ronnie Cox has his program, which fails spectacularly. And then Miguel Ferrer's Bob Morton is the one that comes up with the RoboCop program to be their solution to the crime problem. I just want to say that this movie comes out in 1987, which we've established, but it comes out in a very, very big year for action movies. Because we mentioned Predator is out that same summer. Lethal Weapon comes out in 87. The Living Daylights comes out in 1987. Full Metal Jacket. The Untouchables. All of those movies are out in 1987, with the exception of Lethal Weapon, which is a spring release. They're all summer movies. So, like, that's a pretty stacked box office at the time. And I mean, those movies are all pretty iconic too.
Yeah, what they would, go on to do in the future that's insane that they all were kind of in the same orbit at that time.
Well, I mean, we've spoken on air before about the summer of 1982 like being just such a huge summer because you have E.T. and you have Poltergeist and you have The Thing and Blade Runner all coming out within about a month of each other. And you just think, wow, like, that's incredible. And to think that you have all of these really great action movies all coming out, with the exception of Lethal Weapon, which I believe is a spring release. You have all these great action movies all coming out within about a month of each other. That's awesome. Nowadays, it seems like that doesn't really happen. There's so much stuff flooding the market, but you don't have like 4 or 5 movies out all at the same time that are clearly going to have like crazy longevity and cultural impact. And I don't think that you get that anymore. All right, what do you want to talk about?
Let's talk about the execution scene.
Murphy's execution?
Yes.
So, Murphy's execution is obviously very graphically violent. Mm-hmm. It's one of the many scenes that earned this movie an X rating in the beginning. It was trimmed to satisfy the censors and to get the R rating, but I believe all the versions that are available on DVD and Blu-ray and digital are all the original cut now. But I could be wrong, but it's definitely the version that I've seen so many titimes.
Yeah, because I was gonna say that it's still pretty brutal.
It is, but okay, we'll talk about it, and then I'll tell you what I think is cut. But yes, his execution scene is very brutal. This is kind of the parallel to the Christ crucifixion scene, to the point where The hand getting blown off, the bullet in the head at the end of it. All of that is references to the Christ crucifixion. So Murphy and Lewis get a call on the radio. They thwart, or they end up chasing Bodeker's gang in this van. They have a shootout with them on the road. That's where one of the guys gets hit, and instead of trying to get him some medical attention, they just throw him out of the van onto the windshield
to try to slow the cops down.
Yeah, and that's where Bodeker says, "Can you fly, Bobby?" And then they toss him out. So there's this shootout and this chase on the road. They throw the body out. It causes the cop car to kind of spin out, and the van gets away. But they chase the van down. They track it to a steel mill, and then both Lewis and Murphy go in to try to apprehend the gang, which seemed like a really dumb idea, if I can be honest, because they were clearly outgunned and outmanned.
They're like, yeah, let's go in, just two of us, and let's split up.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, both of them, Murphy especially, pays for that mistake. But Murphy comes across two guys. He goes to apprehend them. One guy goes to grab a shotgun, gets blown away by Murphy, and then Murphy apprehends the other guy, Emil, who definitely comes into one of the greater scenes later on. And as he's apprehending Emil, here come the other members of the gang down the stairs, and they disarm Murphy and they take him down, and then they have their fun with him, and it's a very tough scene to watch.
I love when Bodeker, he's having this real conversation with Murphy. And he's like, you probably don't think I'm a very nice guy, do you? And he's like, Weller's like, buddy, I think you're slime.
Yeah, the way Weller delivers that line, like it's just nothing. He's not scared. He's not. If he's scared, he's not showing it. At least he's just very matter of fact. Like, I think you're slime.
Yeah, very little emotion for the kind of pickle he knows he's in, where he's just like, yeah, well, if this is how I meet my end, so be it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Bodeker, stands up and says, hey, cops don't like me, and I don't much like cops. And he kind of pins his hand down with his boot. And he does this little, kind of target practice thing with the shotgun.
Nee.
And the tension is just kind of building up. But then he stops and he aims and he fires. And very clearly, you see Murphy's hand get blown off.
Because it's a 12 gauge at close range, right?
Yeah, and honestly, Bodeker's probably lucky he didn't blow half of his foot off in the process. And yeah, that's exactly what would happen with a 12 gauge at close range. So Murphy kind of staggers up. They're all laughing, and it's like real sadistic too, because they're all laughing at him. He's staggering around. He's holding the bloody stump, and then everyone just opens fire with there's like what, five guys. That
reminds me of when they're it's a callback to Predator, where they're just opening fire in the jungle for no reason.
Yeah,
they're just like unloading clips. Like, dude, there's no way you need that much ammunition to take care of this guy.
Yeah, and it's probably a little far-fetched, because I don't think anyone can take 20 different shots with a shotgun and survive, even with
the body armor. There's no way. And then to top it off, Bodeker does the headshot, and then we see him Murphy's wheeled out on the gurney as if he's still alive. and they're trying to fight for